You're here because you need to get a handle on something important, and probably pretty quickly. Today, that something is closing the quality improvement loop in healthcare.
Right.
It's really about making sure all that work gathering data actually leads somewhere.
Yeah.
Leads to, real improvements for patients.
Exactly. Because collecting data, that's just step one, isn't it? The real impact comes when we use that information, use it strategically to make care safer, better.
That whole process, data to actual improvement. That's what we're diving into today.
Yeah, and we've got some great perspectives lined up.
We do. We're looking at insights from Joint Commission International, JCI, the big global name in healthcare quality, and also the National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers, NABH, mainly in India.
Right, and we've also pulled in stuff from Supremediq Consultancy and ISQA, that's the International Society for Quality in Healthcare.
Another big global player. And importantly, some really practical stuff from the QI Playbook podcast, too.
Yeah, their stuff is very hands-on. So our mission here is kind of connect the dots, isn't it, between the data, the actions, and the better outcomes for patients.
And also understand what groups like JCI and NABH are actually doing in this space, how they encourage all this.
Definitely.
Okay, let's unpack this then. This idea of closing the loop. Why is it so crucial? Why the emphasis?
Well, think about it this way. Imagine you run diagnostic tests on your car engine. You get the results back.
Yeah.
And then you just file them away. You never actually fix anything based on those results. It wouldn't make sense, right?
No, definitely not. Pointless.
Exactly. And the QI Playbook, they really nail this. They stress that data has to lead to tangible steps, to actual measurable improvement.
So it's not just about tracking numbers like infection rates or patient recovery times?
No. The whole point of gathering that info is to find the weak spots, the areas needing attention, and then make things better.
Right. It sounds like it needs to be a continuous thing, not a one-off check. The QI Playbook mentioned this cycle.
Yeah, cyclical nature. You monitor what's happening.
Okay.
You analyze the data to figure out why it's happening. You implement changes based on that understanding.
Yeah.
And then, this is key, you evaluate, you check if the changes actually worked.
And keep going around that loop.
Precisely. It's a recurring process. As the QI Playbook puts it, this whole thing ensures data isn't just collected, but that it leads to meaningful action and improvement. That's really the heart of it.
Okay, got it. So let's get more specific. What does this cycle actually look like on the ground? The QI Playbook broke it down into, 7 steps?
Yeah, 7 key steps according to them. It kicks off with data collection. Seems obvious, but it's about gathering the right data accurately. Stuff that actually relates to what you want to improve.
Could be patient outcomes, staff satisfaction, anything relevant, really.
Exactly. You can't fix what you don't measure properly.
Makes perfect sense. So after collecting the data...
Step 2 is analysis and interpretation. This is where you roll up your sleeves and really look at the data, spotting patterns, trends, figuring out where things could be better.
Okay. Looking for the story in the numbers.
Right. And tools like Pareto charts can be really useful here.
Pareto charts. Remind me.
They basically help you see the vital few problems that are causing most of the trouble, like the 80-20 rule idea. Focus on the 20% of causes, creating 80% of the issues.
Ah, right. Focus on the biggest hitters.
Yeah. And root cause analysis is huge here, too. Really digging deep to understand the why behind a problem, not just the surface symptom.
Okay, so you found the problems, you know why they're happening. What's next?
Step 3, setting targets. Based on that analysis, you set clear goals, SMART goals, ideally specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
So not just improve things, but reduce post-op infections by 15% in 6 months. Something concrete.
Exactly. That clarity is crucial for focusing everyone's efforts.
I could see that. What's step 4?
Action planning. This is where you figure out how you're going to hit those targets, what specific strategies, what interventions, maybe new training, updated protocols, new tech.
Right, the how-to part.
Precisely. And then step 5 is actually doing it, implementation.
Rolling out the plan.
Yep, putting those new procedures into practice, getting the new system running, whatever the plan entails.
And then, crucially, you need to see if it's actually making a difference. Step 6.
Evaluation and monitoring. You collect more data after the changes to see the impact. Are infection rates dropping? Are staff following the new rules? It's ongoing.
You can't just implement and walk away.
Definitely not. And that leads straight into the final step, number 7, sustaining improvement.
Making it stick.
Exactly. Continuous monitoring, regular check-ins, tweaking strategies if needed, making sure those positive changes become the new standard operating procedure.
Embedding them. Okay, that 7-step cycle makes a lot of sense. But that jump from analysis to action, how do you actually take those data insights and turn them into concrete steps? The QI playbook had thoughts on this too, right?
Yes, they laid out a kind of mini process within the larger cycle, 6 steps for turning data into action. It starts with identifying key issues.
So using that analysis to pinpoint the most critical problems first, like those high infection rates we mentioned.
Right, focus where it matters most. Then comes root cause analysis.
We touched on that, digging deep for the why.
Exactly, and it's so vital. Is the root cause? Poor training, faulty equipment, a flawed process. You have to get to that level. Sometimes you need to ask why, like 5 times to really uncover it.
That thoroughness, that really gets to the kind of understanding our listeners want, the real why.
Absolutely. Once you truly understand the root cause, step 3 is develop actionable goals, specific, measurable goals targeting that root cause.
So not just lower infections, but maybe get 95% compliance with the new hand hygiene protocol in 3 months.
Perfect example. Much more targeted. Then, step 4, choose the right interventions. What actions will actually achieve that specific goal?
Like mandatory training or maybe just more hand sanitizer dispensers.
Could be either or both, depending on the root cause and the goal. You pick what fits. Step 5 is create an implementation plan.
Okay, the roadmap. Who does what, when, with what resources, anticipating problems.
Exactly, a detailed plan so everyone's clear on their role.
Got it.
And finally, step 6, act on the plan. Put it all into motion, make sure everyone has the support they need to make the changes happen.
The QI playbook's hand hygiene example was really clear here. High infection rates, data points to maybe poor hand washing, action, increased compliance. It's a direct link.
Yeah, it really shows how you move from seeing a problem in the data to doing something specific about it.
Now, the playbook also stressed that implementing the change isn't the end, right? You mentioned sustaining it, but there's also monitoring and feedback along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Lasting improvement needs constant attention. That's where monitoring and feedback come in strong. Continuous monitoring means having systems to track those key metrics regularly, like vital signs for your improvement project.
So keeping an eye on those infection rates or maybe how often staff are actually using the new protocol.
Exactly. And then crucially, you need regular feedback. You have to share the progress with the team, let them know what's working, what isn't, where adjustments are needed. Timely, specific feedback is key.
So people see the results of their efforts and know where to focus next. Keeps motivation up too, I imagine.
For sure. And let's be honest, sometimes the first plan, well, it doesn't quite hit the mark. So step 3 here is adjusting strategies as needed.
Being flexible.
You have to be. If the data shows things aren't improving as expected, you need to be willing to adapt. Maybe the training wasn't enough. Maybe you need a different approach.
It's iterative, not set in stone.
Precisely.
Yep.
And the final piece the QI playbook mentioned is celebrating successes and learning from failures.
Important for morale and for getting better next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Recognizing wins reinforces the good stuff. And analyzing what didn't work gives you invaluable lessons for the future. It really drives home that sustained improvement is this ongoing journey of little adjustments and learning.
They had that great real-world example, too, didn't they? The hospital with the heart failure readmissions. Can you walk us through how the loop worked there? It really brought it to life.
Yeah, that was a good one. So this hospital, they collected their data, found that 25% of their heart failure patients were readmitted within 30 days, which is quite high.
Okay, so clear problem identified in the data.
Right. Then analysis.
Yeah.
They dug in and found the likely culprits were gaps in discharge planning and inconsistent follow-up care. So they set a target, reduce these readmissions by 15% within 6 months. Specific, measurable goal.
Got it. Problem, cause, target. What was their action plan?
It involved several things. Better discharge education for patients and families, making sure follow-up phone calls happen within 48 hours post-discharge, and better coordination with community care providers.
Seems comprehensive. How did implementation go?
They trained nurses on the new discharge stuff, set up a dedicated follow-up team, put the plan into action.
And the evaluation. Did it work?
Well, after 3 months, they checked the data again. Readmissions were down by 8%.
Okay, progress. But not the full 15% target yet.
Exactly.
Oh.
And they also found those follow-up calls weren't happening as consistently as planned. There were gaps.
So time for adjustment. Step back into the loop.
Precisely. They implemented an automated reminder system for the calls, gave the follow-up team some extra training and support, and they kept monitoring the rates monthly.
To see if the adjustments worked and stay on track.
Yep. It perfectly illustrates that iterative cycle: implement, evaluate, adjust, keep monitoring. You don't just set it and forget it.
No, it really does make it much clearer seeing it applied like that. Okay, so stepping back a bit from the specifics of the QI playbook, what's the kind of bigger picture here? This idea of closing the loop across healthcare generally.
Well, across all the sources we looked at, this concept of a closed-loop system really comes through as fundamental for any kind of continuous improvement in healthcare. It's basically the same cycle we've been talking about, maybe phrased slightly differently sometimes.
But the core idea is the same.
Yes. Diligent monitoring and data collection. Clearly identifying problems and opportunities, thoughtfully developing and implementing solutions, rigorously evaluating and providing feedback, all feeding into continuous improvement. It's that constant flow.
So the practical steps from the playbook fit right into this larger framework.
Exactly. And the sources also highlight some key elements needed for this loop to actually work well in practice.
Like what?
Well, data-driven decision-making is huge, using objective evidence, not just gut feelings or anecdotes.
Right.
Another big one is focusing on systems, not individuals. When something goes wrong, the first question shouldn't be, whose fault is it? But how did the system allow this to happen?
That's a crucial mindset shift. Fix the process, not blame the person.
Absolutely. Clear communication and feedback are also vital to keeping everyone in the loop. Accountability and ownership, knowing who's responsible for what. And underpinning it all, a culture of continuous learning, always looking for ways to do better, adapting based on what you learn.
And all this relies on tracking those KPIs, right?
Yeah.
Key performance indicators. Things like patient safety events, infection rates, satisfaction scores.
Yes, those KPIs are the fuel for the engine. They provide the objective data points that drive the whole improvement cycle.
Okay. Now let's bring in those organizations we mentioned earlier, JCI, NABH. What's their specific role in helping hospitals and clinics actually do this? How do they help close the loop?
Right, well, Joint Commission International, JCI, is a major global force here. They're really seen as a leader in healthcare quality and patient safety worldwide. Their mission statement is pretty powerful: to enable and affirm the highest standards of healthcare quality and patient safety for all.
Okay. And how do they enable and affirm those standards?
Primarily through their accreditation programs. They set these really rigorous international standards, and healthcare organizations work to meet them to earn JCI accreditation. It's a big deal.
So achieving accreditation shows you meet a high global benchmark.
Exactly. And it's not just about the badge. JCI offers a ton of resources to help organizations get there and stay there. Things like patient safety pathways, specific accreditation programs for different settings, even specialized certifications for clinical programs, or newer areas like telehealth and sustainability.
Sounds comprehensive.
It is. They also offer advisory services consulting, basically to help organizations prepare, improve quality management, infection control, medication safety, you name it. Plus tools, online resources, publications. And they run events like the upcoming Unify 2025, focused on tackling big healthcare challenges.
So it's a whole ecosystem of support, not just standards. We actually heard from a couple people who went through it. Alex Lawn from Hong Kong Adventist Hospitals called the JCI process a team-building exercise, so that it really improved coordination.
Yeah, that's a common theme. The process itself forces teams to work together differently, communicate better, and has those side benefits. And Shiji Kurian from Burjil Farah Hospital mentioned JCI gives them a competitive advantage and boosts community confidence.
Right, that external validation matters. People trust that JCI stamp. Okay, what about NABH in India?
NABH, the National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers, plays a very similar role, but focused specifically within India. It's part of the Quality Council of India.
Yeah.
Their main job is setting up and running accreditation programs for Indian healthcare organizations, setting benchmarks for quality that are relevant to the Indian context and meet consumer needs there.
So a parallel system tailored for India. And there are consultants like Supremediq who help hospitals navigate that NABH process.
Exactly. Just like with JCI, there's support available to help organizations meet those national standards.
And then there's ISQA, the International Society for Quality in Healthcare. How do they fit in?
ISQA is more of a global community and knowledge-sharing network. They're all about promoting quality improvement internationally. They do this through education, sharing best practices across borders, research. They also run big international conferences where people from all over the world connect.
So less about setting specific standards for one hospital, more about advancing the whole field.
Kind of. They also do offer external evaluations and accreditation, but often for the accreditation bodies themselves, like validating JCI's or NABH's processes, and also for healthcare organizations. But yes, a big part of their role is fostering that global conversation and learning about quality and safety, connecting experts from over 70 countries.
Okay, so we have these major players, JCI, NABH, iSQA. How does their work directly connect back to ensuring healthcare organizations are actually closing the quality improvement loop day to day?
Well, the core connection is through the accreditation standards themselves. Whether it's JCI or NABH, their requirements typically demand that organizations show evidence they have systems for monitoring data,
Right.
for identifying problems based on that data, for implementing changes, and crucially for evaluating if those changes worked. They essentially require organizations to demonstrate they're using a closed-loop approach.
So the accreditation process itself forces organizations to formalize and use this QI loop.
Exactly. It provides the framework and, frankly, the motivation, the need to meet the standard, to adopt and consistently apply this continuous improvement cycle. It's not just a suggestion. It's often a requirement for achieving that respected accreditation.
So for you, the listener, seeing that an organization is accredited by JCI or NABH gives you some assurance that these kinds of rigorous quality improvement processes are actually in place.
Yes, it's a strong indicator. It validates that they're committed to this cycle of learning and improving.
Okay, that really pulls it all together. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing you want people to take away today?
I think the absolute key message is that closing the quality improvement loop. It's not just jargon. It's not just a checkbox exercise. It's a fundamental continuous process for making healthcare genuinely better and safer for patients.
It's about going beyond just collecting the data.
Absolutely. It demands meaningful action based on that data, and then the persistence to monitor, evaluate, and sustain those improvements over time. It's an ongoing commitment.
Right. The data is the starting point, but the action and the follow-through are where the real value lies.
Precisely. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Consider how these principles, this cycle of data, action, evaluation, refinement, might apply in other parts of your own life or work, anywhere you're seeking improvement.
Interesting angle.
Yeah, and think about how understanding these frameworks actually empowers you. It helps you look more critically at claims about quality or progress, whether it's in healthcare or, any other field. You have a better lens for evaluating them.
That's a really powerful takeaway. And of course, if you want to explore further, digging into the work of organizations like JCI, NABH, iSQA, it's fascinating to see how these principles are applied globally to push healthcare forward.
Definitely worth a look.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. Lots to think about.